With that, I would like to introduce our speakers. We have Randy James and Vicki Carter from Spokane Conservation District. Randy is a board member, and did I hear you were recently elected board chair? And he is now the board chair. And Vicki Carter is the executive director, and she is actually from Helena, so it's kind of like coming home. Randy also has some roots in Montana, so it's really wonderful to not only hear from a conservation district from another state, nearby, but another state, but also from folks who also know and love Montana. So welcome, and thank you so much for being here.
So the coat does have a story, and I'll tell that in a little bit. Thank you so much for having us. Vicki and I are really excited, and Vicki definitely has roots here. Born and raised, Capitol High, but you cannot have her back. You know, when you look at our title, you know how do you create a powerhouse? It was not easy, and it's a long-term journey. Huge amounts of work, as you all know, persistence, grit, and a thing I like to call yet, the power of yet. And I was introduced to the power of yet really early in life. And I like to tell like one short story, but there's lots of stories. Most of you will discover that as you start hearing about my story and our conservation district story, and that you have similar stories. Your conservation district does, your family does, you have. So back in many, many years ago, my brother encouraged me to turn out for cross country as a freshman at Ferris High School in Spokane, Washington. And I thought, well, I can't hit a ball, I can't dribble a ball. I was horrible at the ball sports. I thought I can put one foot in front of another, and I turned out for cross country. There was 18 freshmen that year that turned out for cross country. I could beat one of them, Al Williams. He had Oscar Slaughter's disease. He had bad knees, and I could beat him. At All City, I placed 78th out of 84. So I can still remember a really important moment in my life is that our coach sat all of us down, all 18 of us down in a room called the Pit. It was not called the Pit because it was dark and dingy. It was called the Pit because it smelled like a pit. And we were all sitting on those old wooden benches, remember from the bleacher type benches, and there was a 2x4 with nails that we'd hang our dripping wet clothes from running on. And we sat there, and Herm Cavanis went and said, okay, I've never had a freshman run 1,000 miles from December 1st to March 1st. And he leaned down to the first kid in the row and said, how about you? Then he went to the next kid, how about you? And I was sitting in the middle, and he came to me and he goes, how about you? And I said, Coach, I'm not very good. And he went and said, you're not very good yet. Well, I went on to be All-American, two-time All-American in high school, 4 state championships. I ran for the University of Oregon, 2 national championship teams, a second and third place team. Went on and got inducted into their Hall of Fame. And that power of yet, that was a long time period. It entailed running 1,000 miles that winter, and 1,000 miles in the spring, and 1,000 miles in the summer, and 1,000 miles. And it was quite challenging. So the letter jacket. This letter jacket doesn't look like it was made for 1960-something. It was made for 2017. I retired from teaching in 2017. So back when I was a freshman and a sophomore and a junior and senior, I lettered. But the decision at our family level was, do you want running shoes or would you like a letter sweater? And a letter sweater was $18. A letter jacket was $45. Some of you had kids that you've bought letter jackets for. They're not worth $45 anymore, are they? They're hundreds of dollars. And so the decision was made is that I would have running shoes instead of a letter sweater. So I never had a letter sweater in all the time I ran. So I have a box full of letters from Ferris High School. So when I graduated from high school, my second time, after 39 years of teaching, my students bought me a letter jacket. I had my first high school letter jacket. So the power of yet. So I want you to envision, as you start looking at your conservation district, what is the key things that allows a conservation district to go from point A to point B? And when you start thinking about that, it is those dreams of that mindset, growth mindset, that you can go from point A to point B and you're not stagnant, it's not a fixed mindset, and it's that we're just not there yet. And then the second most important part is people. We're in the people business. We deal with water and land and soil and air, but we actually deal with people, our partners, our constituents, and the people that work for us. So I'd like to highlight some of the things about our people at our Conservation District and many of the projects that they do. And I've got a couple pictures here, and I think this will work if I point it right at it. Maybe not. Maybe so. It's not working. Yeah, it's this one? Yeah. It's probably been sitting too long. Aha. So there's me at Ferris High School, and the kid behind me is Tim Jordan, and then University of Oregon. I'll let you pick out who's that. This is 1973. There's Bill Bowerman, who was 1972 Olympic track coach. Bill Dillinger, a three-time Olympian, bronze medalist in the 1964 Olympics, almost won it. And some pretty nice, really amazing people there in that. So when you start thinking about the power of yet, did it work for you? Okay. It's just this simple phrase, and I think it's one of the most powerful words in the world. For our children, for our neighbors, for our constituents, for the people that we work with, for the people in your boards. We're just not there yet. So a little bit about Spokane. We're a population of 500,000, about 1.1 million acres, 500,000 acres of agriculture and timber land. I think almost 70 lakes, hundreds of miles of streams. It's an interesting transition zone. If you look at the map, have you ever been to Spokane? How many people have been to Spokane? So you looked at the Palouse that's south of there. That Palouse used to be covered with timber, big, massive trees. In fact, the people I've talked to, they've talked about their grandparents and great-grandparents could ride on a horse as fast as you wanted to without having to dodge the trees. But they were massive trees. They were all cut down to build all the villages and the towns that ultimately grew up to be Colfax and Pullman and Spokane. But right at Spokane is the transition from the Palouse, which is primarily grains, and timbered land that runs clear up on into Canada. So that left-hand picture, that's Helena in the 1930s. And then that's Vicki's grandma hoeing the garden right after. Not really, but most of you know the history of the conservation districts and where they started in that. So as you know, they started in the 1930s. And in Washington in 1939, RCW 89.08 came into existence, and we visit that regularly as a board. 8908 is our guiding light. It tells us what we're able to do, what's legal to do, and there's always that question, well, is this legal? Can we do this? Can we create this partnership? Can we sell this? Can we buy this? And so we have annual meetings every summer. Sometimes they're a full day, sometimes they're 2 full days, where we revisit what are our policies, where are we going, what are we doing, that power of yet, and we're always looking at 8908 on where it places us. So in 1941, the Conservation District, Spokane Conservation District, came into existence. So that means, as you know, we celebrated 80 years last year of existence. And it's been a really good 80 years. If you look back at the very first part of the Conservation District, I know these people well. We used to have 2 employees that would go out and cut wood and sell cords of wood just to keep the doors open. They would drive the 300 miles to Seattle, buy used cars, bring them back to Spokane, and hope they could sell them for a profit just to keep the doors open. So you know where our roots are and to where we've gone. So as you know, we have a special assessment, and I know that you've got that joint House bill at 27 that legislators are looking at right now, and it's a resolution to try to go from the extractive dollars, the coal dollars that funds conservation districts, to be looking at an assessment. I encourage you to visit with your legislatures aggressively on the value of what that could mean for you. I understand the coal monies are diminishing, and with an assessment, it would open up whole avenues where you could go. So we had an assessment. Our first assessment was for $3. About 9 years later, it went up to $5. In 2014, our Board of County Commissioners revisited, and we went from an assessment to what's called rates and charges, and it's just a different language. It's the same thing as an assessment, and they approved us that we could go higher if we wanted to, and we asked in 2019 for $10. So that's 28 years of $3, $5, and then finally we're at $10 per parcel. That does mean that we have monies that allows us to do things, but it's not everything. So yes, you could be like, oh my gosh, they've got so much money, that's where they're at. I'm still going to put it out that it's the people. It's the people that have looked at where we could go and what we can do that. So this represents about $2 million of our budget, and our budget ranges from $8 to $10 million a year. So it's a large portion, but it's not anything compared to what else is coming through our doors. So people, you know, you have Vicki, and you have Corey, and you have Jeannie, and you have Jeff, and you have Josie, and look at their smiles. We absolutely love them. They are the heart and soul. They're the kind of the crossroads of our conservation district. So all of the grants, all the funding, all the financials, all the legals, everything runs through them. So they're actually the switchboard that makes us possible and allow us to function. Our largest department is the water resources. You have Walt, you have Lindsay and Seth and Joe and Charlie and Dan, and I mean, they are geeky. I mean, look at them. They're water resources. And we absolutely love them. They are nonstop work. We're always challenging them with, well, could we do this? And they're always challenging us, could we do this? Always looking at opportunities of making our water resources department the best they possibly can. So I'd like to share some of the things that they actually do. And this is just actually in a nutshell. It's nothing like all of the things that they've got involved. I don't know if I hit that. There we go. So they have what's called a commodity buffer program. And a commodity buffer program incentivizes producers to plant commodity buffers along the waterways. In that, I believe we have 120 miles now enrolled. And that incentivizing makes it so that they can plant that buffer and not feel like they're taking crops out and the amount of income from those crops. And it's been extremely successful. 120 miles is a long ways. We have a repair and restoration and fish barrier removal project. Well, I'm always asking for them to quantify. You know how McDonald's first began, and they said we've sold 100,000, and then 1 million, and then 30 million. I really encourage conservation districts to quantify. How do we communicate our successes unless you quantify? So you're going to say, well, we did a lot of miles this year. Well, we did 100 miles this year of this. So we have 126 miles of streams that have been opened up to fish migration to move into the headwaters where it's cooler in the summer, like last summer, and that for spawning beds and that from where there's your culverts, where you have your drop culverts where the fish cannot move. 126 miles we've opened up, and we have 3 brand new projects which will open up dozens of more miles and more projects on the horizon. The voluntary stewardship program, which is the state mandated program, the county made us the lead of that. And this is looking at just the productivity and how can we go and just look at the critical areas and the economic viability of agriculture. And then our septic repair and replacement program. Spokane sits on top of its aquifer, and it's just a great big giant gravel bed that's hundreds of feet deep in places. Sometimes you can actually see the water. If you look at the gravel pits, it's actually the aquifer there. There's one well you can go to, and you look down, and you can see the water flowing through. And so we have a lot of people that are still on septic systems. They're not hooked up to the sewer. We have low-interest loans that we provide to people to go and hook up and get into the sewer system and get their septic systems taken care of. So our next department, there we go, is forestry. And if you thought water resources are geeky, they're definitely geeky. And you have Garth and Ben and Matt and Jeff, and talk about nonstop work. And forestry is so diverse, so many demands upon them because of all of the interfaces we have now. Fighting wildfires, you go back several decades, not even that, a decade ago in parts of Montana was not as convoluted now as because the interfaces between urban, suburban, and rural. and it's gotten much more challenging. And so their jobs have continued to be challenging. So some of the projects that they have is they have the Firewise and Home Ignition Zone program, dozens of visits to go out and help homeowners recognize where the ignition zones are and how they can make their properties better fire-wise. Forest health and wildfire protection projects, a lot of forest health projects, assisting getting DNR to come out and visit land, and there's areas where they're going to do some clearing and thinning and whatnot. Tree City USA and urban forestry. And what's exciting is that Spokane is part of our conservation district. And we have all of the lots of Spokane, and we also have about 80,000, I think, small farms, small acreage in that. And so it gets quite convoluted when you start thinking about that. But what's exciting about the Tree City USA, Spokane is a tree city, but we also now, we have the first in the nation tree campus. So a school, On Track Academy, applied, four schools applied during COVID, and On Track Academy was the first in line to be identified as a tree campus, and the Conservation District assisted them, and it's pretty exciting. And what's exciting is it's expanding throughout the district and throughout the city to look at what can they do within their own neighborhoods. There's an area in northeast Spokane that is absolutely a heat island. It's anywhere from 15 to 20 degrees warmer than any place else in the city because of the lack of trees. High poverty areas have fewer trees. So we targeted that area, and so we have all the schools in that area now looking at how can they do this, and it's amounted to hundreds of trees, street trees and yard trees being planted because of that program, and the Conservation District assisted in that program. And then we have an annual tree sale. Since 1974, we've averaged $100,000 in tree sales. What's exciting, and again, that's thousands of trees being planted out into our community and within our county, but the excess, we have our own nursery on site. We heal them in, we save them for our own projects, but also allows us to donate them to schools and such that want to go and do things to improve the urban canopy. So a production ag, small department, but talk about on that leading edge of where things are going. You have Ty and Scott, and it's one of those departments that you think, oh, nothing's going on right now, and then it's just the learning curve explodes the very next week. And that, so since we have an assessment, it opened us up to what's called state revolving funds. State revolving funds come from the Department of Ecology, and currently we've put out about $26 million of low-interest loans to producers to go and get more conservation on the ground. Since I'm not sure if Montana is set up to do that, it'd be something to encourage and push. So we put it out at a certain percentage. We give money back to the Department of Ecology. We get to keep a certain percentage for our own projects. It's been extremely successful. In fact, I was just learning here on Thursday at our meeting, there's a brand new thing that's a seed crusher, seed destroyer that goes on the back of the combine. And what it does is it destroys any seeds coming out of the back of the combine. And there are some producers that are saying that they did not have to spray before their next crop that they put in. So it's decreasing the amount of chemicals going on their property by putting this thing on. We're providing loans to do things like that, and sprayers, and like minimal till drills and that. Oh no, that wasn't good. Here we go. Okay, awesome. We have what's called the Farm Smart Land-Based Practice Program. We own the copyright to Farm Smart, and Farm Smart is like a 35-point farm plan that adds assurances if they ever get audited, and it also adds a way of marketing their crops, that they were Farm Smart and they had a farm plan. We have biofarming and structured water program, and what's exciting about the biofarming and structured water is the quality of water that you're mixing your chemicals with really determines the effectiveness of those chemicals. And so it's a system that provides clean water for them to mix their chemicals, and they're seeing a 50% reduction in the chemicals they're putting on their lands by just shifting out on the type of water quality. And then again, with education, the Farm Food Symposium and Pacific Northwest Direct Seed Association, field days. We provide field days regularly. In fact, they're doing one right now. And during that field day, we bring in Ray Archuleta, which is a nationally known biofarming person, and we provide keynote speakers. Many of our producers will provide their shops, and we throw a bunch of chairs and feed people lunch. And what's really exciting is like a group like you, they're sitting talking about what are some best practices and those yets. Where would I like to be? What would it take to go and get to the next point? Aha. Education outreach, again, small department, huge job. Stacy and Hillary. And when you start looking at education, education and outreach can come and go. You can get really, really busy in all of your other things and don't even recognize all the different things that are out there. So when we start looking, we have backyard conservation, and with a large city smack dab in the middle of our county, backyard conservation is something that we really need to pay attention to. I know it's easy to go and look at large producers and large tracts of land and large forestry, but when you're sitting on top of your aquifer, it's really nice to go and look at backyard conservation. And it also has them start thinking about where their food comes, and that comes to the next part, is that we have, I'm not very good at that. It's the angle, I think. It might have timed also. That do it? No. Oh, thank you. We have Wheat Week and Trouts in the classroom. We go out and visit multiple classrooms with Wheat Week. And what's exciting about that is kids come away knowing where their food came from. Trout in the classroom, the thing about trout in the classroom is we have multiple places that we have aquariums that kids get eggs, they raise them up to fingerlings, they go out and they release them. And what's really exciting, the kids, first off, it's really fun for them to do. It's really neat to see where life comes from the egg all the way up to the fingerling. But what's really exciting is when you ask the kids in that, they recognize and say, my gosh, it's really hard. And we go and say, what do you mean really hard? They have to have really clean water. It has to be a certain temperature. So it's no longer just like, oh yeah, things just grow and you have things out in your streams and that. They recognize that it takes a whole lot more as far as that stream, the water quality of that stream, the temperatures of those streams. The Spokane farm corridors, we actually have 4 farm corridors, and these are recent things that have happened. We have out in the West Plains, which is like Fairchild Air Force Base area, Spokane Valley, North Spokane, and South Spokane. And this is producer direct to consumer. And it's quite exciting for us. And then we have our Rocks the Root podcast. We're going on our 5th year of our Rocks the Root podcast. At first it was like, I don't know what a podcast is. I just did my first podcast here last fall. And I think we're up to 40 podcasts. And it's looking from backyard to the back 40. And it's getting people engaged in the conversations of conservation. It might be just a backyard conservation. It might be an urban forestry conservation, clear up to a large tract piece of forestry land. We bring guest speakers in, and we have a podcast with them. Name recognition, what we know in that, and it's increased a lot of our recognition and a lot of the sense of where we're going and helping us with ideas of where we're going. Maybe if I dance. You don't want to see me dance. Oh, there we go. This is near and dear to Vicki's heart. This is Vicki's brainchild, love. It's just amazing. So Vets on the Farm, you have Grant and Dwayne and Bree and Brittany and Jeff and John and Kyle. And Vets on the Farm is just this wonderful opportunity to get vets engaged in farming and in conservation on the land. Do you want to go next? Do you want to hit it next? Awesome. Okay, so what's really fun is that we love this picture because we got these guys holding these flowers and that. So we have a veteran-based agriculture and conservation learning farm. So we actually have a farm. It's a long-term lease at $0. One of our producers had a piece of land, and they leased it to us. It had a home on it. The home was run down and a mess, and we had a local building supply not only donate a little bit, but come in and help renovate the home. And this is our learning farm. Our vets come here many times out of the community college program, and they learn what it means to go and take care of the soil and grow up crops and how to market those crops, and from the soil clawing up to the point of what is it going to cost to produce this? What is the chemicals going in? What are the chemicals that we need to go and do? How do we minimize that? Local food systems, small acreage technical assistance. So they're working on the farm, and they actually know how to take that to the small acreage, into the small backyard systems that we have. Beekeeping and pollinator program and cultivating success program. And I mentioned that we have those food corridors, and we have a lot of farmers markets. We have a food truck. And so they grow produce on this farm, and they take it directly out to the farmers markets. And we're looking at high quality produce from the land directly to the consumer, and the vets are involved in this. And this is Vicki's brainchild. This is an amazing opportunity for our vets in our area. So the question is what is your yet? So I've had multiple yets in my family. I finally got a letter jacket. I became a runner. And, I always hated the statement where somebody went and said, well, yeah, he was born a good athlete. No. I was the last person to be picked. My best friend, Jerry, remember how they'd go and pick the really good athletes, in PE? And they'd stand there and they'd point on who was going to be on their team? I'd be pleading with my eyes at Jerry, please pick me. Please pick me. He was reluctant to pick me. And yet I was able to become an athlete. And I think it was that power of yet. So what are your yets? So it might be looking at your program. How do we improve your program? How do we go and adjust it? How do we make it fit better to meet the needs of our constituents? It could be partnerships. What's exciting about our partnerships is that when I first started 23 years ago, this was our number of partners, and they were the classic ones. And then it did this and this. And now with each new project, our partnerships literally explode. It's amazing the number of partners we have out there. We are in the people business. New facility. We outgrew ours, and we're running out of our lease. And so we needed a new facility. And Vicki stumbled on a piece of land. And so we have a brand new facility. Policy change. We're always visiting our policies. We visit at, sometimes it's literally just, can we look at that policy at our next meeting? In our annual meeting, we look at all of our policies and revisit our policies along with 8908. New funding sources. Looking for a variety of new funding sources. You have that Joint House Resolution 27 that might open some amazing funding sources for you. And the last one is outreach events. I never thought we'd be doing podcasts. And it's an amazing opportunity of what we've done. So on your tables, there's slips of paper. What is your yet? And there's some pens there. I'd like for you to do some dreaming. I'd like to think about some of the things you say, we're not there yet. We'd like to go and do this. I'd like for you to write them down, and then I'm going to ask for some of you to be brave and share them later. And when Vicki gets done, we'll have questions and answers, and then we'll also ask you for you to share some of the yets of where you'd like to go and see yourselves going. So I'd like to introduce Vicki to you. You get to do the next one. Oh, good. So Vicki's been with us for 31 years. As you heard, born and raised Montana, Capitol High. Her mom lives in Helena, 91 years old. She was going to be here, but it was a bit too windy. And you can imagine, she has tough stock. If our program department is, like the crossroads, Vicki is the nucleus. She's always challenging the board. The board is always challenging her. She's always challenging employees. The employees are always challenging her, but not in the bad challenge way of what can we do now? Where could we go? And we've got this mindset that's a growth mindset of we can just let's try this. We've had failures. You have to know we've had failures. We had a straw bale press. Oh boy. We built straw homes, and we're going from the transition of we used to be able to burn all our Kentucky bluegrass fields from where we could not burn them anymore. Well, how do we keep people producing Kentucky bluegrass without dealing with all the straw residue? So we're looking at options. And we got burned a few times in some of our loans. Yeah, but we keep telling ourselves, are we still getting conservation on the ground, and are we willing to take those risks to go and put conservation on the ground? So rather than holding back, we become fearless, and Vicki is definitely fearless. So Vicki Carter.
Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you so much for those kind words, Randy. And I'm glad that he clarified that those challenges were not the bad kind, because they are really good. And it's those challenges that make all of us grow, both as board members and as staff. So we are so pleased to be here, and I want to just thank again Mary Hendricks and her crew for the invitation to be here tonight. Of course, as Randy mentioned, this is not just my home state, my hometown, Helena, Montana. And right now, I just want to send my dearest and most heartfelt concerns and prayers and thoughts to the entire state of Montana right now as you are under this siege of weather and this relentless, I don't even know what's going on. I mean, from Red Lodge and the flooding, it just seems like something's going on across every part of the state. I know that there are still drought areas as well. And then there's, the Glacier Park, and are they ever going to get that road plowed up there? You start to wonder, right? But that's going to make your work as a conservation district even more important because, as you all know, we were all born out of this. That's where our roots are, is in drought and flooding and soil and water and wildfire, and so it's becoming even more critical and crucial as we see what's happening on our landscape today. And I will tell you, I couldn't be more excited for you about this House Joint Bill 27. And I know right now it's just a study for funding, but if there's anything that we could possibly do to help support that, I will offer up my personal time to come and testify, to come and help, to come and talk. Because, like Randy mentioned, we do have an assessment or rates and charges, and it certainly goes a long, long way, and it will for you too. And I know that it's really hard sometimes in smaller communities to think about, we don't want to tax our neighbor, but think about the benefit. Think about what you would lose without having that ability to have some revenue to do these projects. Folks, Montana, that assessment could help you with practices. It's a leverage for you to be able to go get other money from federal sources and other state sources. But that Montana is based largely also on your tourism, and you need those dollars. And if our natural resources are not protected and taken care of and well loved, you'll lose that economy too. So I'm here today to say, if there's any legislators in the audience, please support your conservation districts in this funding. And if there's something that I can do to help in that way, let me know. Randy mentioned you can't have me back, but someday I am going to retire, and I do hope to come back home to my home state of Montana, and I'd love to serve on a board that had some money so that we can get something done. All right. Anyway, so as I mentioned, I've been in Spokane now for 36 years. 31 of that I've spent with the Spokane Conservation District. I've been there a long time. Right now, I always consider Montana, obviously, my home. Live in Spokane, but my home is Montana. I could sing the song, I wear a bandana. Anyway, but right now, my claim to fame back in Spokane is, yes, I know Father Stu. So I am a 1983 graduate of Capitol High School, and I did go to high school with Stu Long. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, there's a Mark Wahlberg movie out called Father Stu, and it is truly an incredible story of triumph and redemption, and it's about Stu Long, who graduated in 1981. He went to Carroll College. This isn't about Stu tonight, but Stu, we love you. I know he's up in heaven now. He was my mother's priest at the Big Sky Care Facility when she was out there. If you haven't seen the movie, it's a must-see, okay? I'm just gonna leave it at that. So as Randy and I were putting this together to visit with you tonight, this was a month or so ago when Mary called us and talked to us about this. We really wanted to come up with some key concepts that there would be at least a little takeaway for each one of you. So whether that's the piece that Randy talked about, the people piece, what we came up with was it's the people, it's the governance, which is your board, and then it's the partnerships, and those are all so valuable. And so if you look at your organization as a three-legged stool, the people are definitely one of those legs, right? And the other two legs are your governance, in our opinion, and your partnerships. And they all share equal importance. But as I was preparing to come on this trip, what day did I leave on? Sunday, I opened up my briefcase. And I haven't opened my briefcase in a couple of years because I haven't gone anywhere because of COVID. And so there were a couple things in there, and I pulled them out. And as I pulled them out, there were 2 brochures in there from our last WACD, so the sister organization to this, the last time that we met in person, and that was in 2018 for me, and it was Embracing Change Through Partnerships. Funny, here we are talking about partnerships again. And the other one was re-engaging your board through governance. And I thought, how ironic is that these 2 things would just pop up on the top of my briefcase as we're going off to speak to these people tonight over in Montana. So with that, I will, well, actually, I want to just back up for a second here. So Randy mentioned growth mindset, and I just wanted to make the obvious connection here. Does this work? Right here? Okay. That's Randy, and he said circa 1969, right, Randy? And then the other picture I circled for you, because he didn't mention which one he was. And I just wanted to look at the growth mindset that was happening in those short years between 1969 and 1973. And I just got to put it out there now. I am a 65 model myself, so the 70s were great years. 2 great things came out of the 70s: mustaches and music. Mission Mountain Wood Band, right here out of Montana. All right. So Randy also mentioned that, of course, I've been here 31 years, but in numbers, that's 2/3 of my life that I've worked for the Spokane Conservation District, a very long time. So I put together this very scientific model or timeline of what 31 years looks like, and I want to share that with you. I hope that you'll be able to relate to this. There it is. This is what 31 years looks like. 1991, over on the left, those are my children. They were 5 and 6 years old the year that I started for the Spokane Conservation District. Those are the pictures I took to work, and those are the pictures that are on my desk still to this day. In this timeline to 2022, these are 2 of my grandsons, one from each child there, and that's Mason Jesse and Maverick William. They sound like little Montana outlaws. And that's the timeline there of my life, right there. I was looking at these pictures side by side, never having done this before, and I started remarking about how much happier my grandchildren look than my own children. And it occurred to me that in 1991, that was the year I started, that was the year of those pictures. It was also the year that we took a family trip to Eureka, Montana for Easter. I had an older sister that lived up there, and we were going up there for a family Easter. And this is a story that's well known in my family. I had the brilliant idea, because my husband had never been over the Yak Pass. Anybody know the Yak Pass? Just a few of you. Oh, let me encourage you to do it in the summertime. So this is Easter, and I just said to my husband, make sure you call and get a road report just to make sure that it's open. Got it, done. We both worked until about noon that day, so we took off. I love driving at night for some reason. We took off, and we hit the Yak Pass, and it's just getting to be dusk, because this is late March or early April. I can't quite remember. So we get to the pass, and if you've ever been there, you know that the entry to the Yak Pass is actually a cattle guard with a gate. Gate open, road report, good to go. Let's go. So up we go to the Yak Pass. We're driving along, and we're noticing that the snow is getting deeper, and it's really kind of concerning, but we got 2 things going for us. Well, actually, we have 3 things. I'm from Montana. We got a road report, and we had a Subaru, so we were going forward. So off we go, and about a third of the way up, we got stuck for the first time. And we managed to get ourselves out of that little disaster, and we're not turning around, because I'm positive that it's going to get better, and their Yak Pass, we had the road report, we're all good, let's go. So we go again, we get stuck again. Second time now it is starting to get, it's not dark, but it's dusk. And we were really stuck, and we didn't have any traction, nothing to get any kind of traction with. So we both had coats. We took off our coats and put it underneath the rear tires, and we got out somehow. We ruined our coats, but we got out. We're good to go. I said, I know it's not that much further. It's got to get better on the other side. This probably doesn't bring you a lot of comfort, Randy. So we took off again, And we got stuck again for the third time. And now we're about 2/3 of the way up the mountain. And we realize we are stuck for the night because it is dark. So I have these 2 babies in the back, 5 and 6 years old. And of course, they're crying and they're hungry. The only thing we had was a German chocolate cake, a dozen hard-boiled eggs, some caramel corn, and no water. 0. Not a bottle of water on us. No matches. So we're sitting in the car. We realize we're there for the night. We're down to a 1/4 tank of gas. And you're going to wonder why am I talking about this? It all ties together, I promise. Stick with me. So 1/4 tank of gas, and we cover up the kids with the mats. We don't have coats because we've ruined ours on the second time we were stuck. And so we're just kind of visiting, and I'm expressing my dissatisfaction with the state of Montana's road department and telling us that this was an open road and that the Yak Pass was open, and I must have said the Yak Pass enough times that my husband finally said, I think there's a problem. I didn't realize there was a pass and a road, and I think I just asked if the Yak Road was open. So, lesson learned, communication is key in any good relationship or partnership. I was not happy. So when Mama's not happy, nobody's happy. But it was late that night, and we ended up sleeping in the car, turning it off and on periodically just to have it just warm enough that we could stand being in it, and until morning broke. And then my sweet husband had to hike back down. It totaled 27 miles that he hiked down. He had the worst blisters you've ever seen in your life in order to find help to come up and pull us out, which he did. Now, interestingly, my family knew we were missing. This is 1991, and for some reason, we didn't have cell phones. And I can't remember if it's because we just didn't have cell phones or if it was because cell phones, they weren't that big of a thing then, but whatever, we didn't have cell phones. So there was no way to communicate with my family, but they put out APBs in Washington, Idaho, Montana, British Columbia, and southern Alberta for a blue Mazda. Okay, so my husband had a black Audi and I had a gray Subaru. So I'm not sure that we would have ever been found anyway. So it's kind of a standing joke that maybe they didn't actually want us there for that Easter. All right, so we're going to talk more about how that relates, but I just wanted you to know what exactly 31 years looks like. So with any organization, of course, there's the governance structure. And some of it's very loose, and then some of it is more refined. And certainly we've had our days of that being a loose organization as well. I want to take just a minute and introduce our board members. Now, this picture was taken in our brand new building, and of course it was during COVID, and I don't know if you're familiar with Washington, but we wore masks for 2 years. I don't have a new picture of all of my board members together, so I promise you they're actually very good-looking people. But on the left is Jerry Sheely. He, up until Thursday night, was our board chair. He served us for over 28 years as our chair. A wonderful man, farmer. He farmed out in the Palouse area of Spokane County, wheat and barley, and for 40 years. And he just brings a wealth of knowledge to our board, and we love having him, and we'll continue to have him on our board. And then, of course, Randy. And Randy brings such enthusiasm and joy to our board that I love working with him, and I couldn't be more excited to now work with him as our chair. Randy's been with me for 23 years, so we have worked together now in the Spokane Conservation District for a long time as well. And he just brings that, that perspective from always being a learner and a teacher, and it's really wonderful to have that combination on our board and to be able to share that, not just with the board members, but with all of our constituents that we serve. And Jackie Schrager, she serves as our auditor / it's the same as they call it in Washington, auditor, but it's a treasurer position. Jackie's an educator as well. She and her husband Bob have a farm just north of Spokane, which is in our wooded area or forested area up in Deer Park. Jackie's been with us for about 15 years. And then Tom Miller. Tom is, he's a Marine colonel, aviation pilot. He started Heart Flight of Spokane, which is our emergency helicopter service. He's just an incredible human being. Property owner, big landowner out in the south part of Spokane County. And then Wendy Knopp, and Wendy is, she just retired too, but she was the vice president of Ag Vision for Northwest Farm Credit Services. And Wendy, along with one other woman, and I were co-founders of Vets on the Farm, which is the program that is very near and dear to my heart. So I'm going to just take another little tiny diversion right here, because I'm going to talk about partnerships, but I'm going to tell a story about how not to be a partner. So because of Vets on the Farm, I come from a big military family. My brother-in-law right now is the Assistant Adjutant General for the state of Montana Army. My sister is also here. She's a Chief Warrant Officer 4. I have 11 family members all currently serving, one of which is my own son, and he was stationed up at Malmstrom Air Force Base in the Air National Guard, and he's deployed 4 times. On one of his, I think it was his very first deployment back home, the Yellow Ribbon Ceremony, you know, they tell you to come like at 6 o'clock at night, and then the planes don't actually get in until like 11 o'clock at night, and it's just a long, long day, and you become very tired. So I was up there, and I had grandchildren with me. I had, I think, 3 of them with me, and my daughter, and we were waiting a long time for this plane to come in. And at one point, I went and used the restroom, and I left all the kids there, and they're littles, and I saw this gentleman talking to my kids without any other adult around, and I was like, not cool with that. And I walk up to him and I said, "Excuse me, can I help you?" And he stood up and he said, "Yes." And he said, "Steve Bullock, nice to meet you." And I went, "Steve Bullock, you mean Governor Bullock? Very nice to meet you too, sir." Probably not the best impression I've ever made on somebody, but he wrote me a really nice letter and thanked my son for serving, and anyway, that's my military story. Vets on the Farm is very near and dear to my heart, Randy, so thank you for bringing that up. Okay, let's see. Let's go on here. I'm going to get into a little bit of our governance. So again, where we came from, I don't know exactly what the structure was, but like a lot of districts in their early formative years, they didn't have employees for a long time. They didn't have employees at the Spokane District until 1983. So I'm sure that the board actually did a lot of the work, whatever that was. And I know it was a lot of public law work. There was PL 455, you know, there were different programs, but it was all run by volunteers. But in 1991, when I came on, we were still under what we call operational governance, which means our board was very involved. And to the point where it was almost confusing, because we now had 4 employees, as to who was the boss. It was like, we have a manager, or is it the board member? Or when the board member comes in, do we just drop everything and do what they say? And is it that board member or that board member? And we were at a time when we were starting to grow, because in 1991 we did get our assessment. So we were starting to program and things were happening, but it got confusing. And we stayed in that system, and I call it day-to-day management. We stayed in there for a long time. And in 2000, our board chair, Jerry Shealy, and I, we went together to a workshop or seminar on governance, and that was called the Carver Model. And so we brought that back, and we actually operated under that for a period of time, about 7 years. But we weren't really good at it because it was negative. And I don't know if you're familiar with the Carver model at all, but a lot of the policy says things like, "Thou shall not." The director or manager or whatever is, "Thou shall not do this," or "Thou shall not fail to." And the intent is there, but honestly, words matter, and it just never felt good. It never felt good to our board, and it certainly didn't feel good to me. And so we just we were there, we called it, this different governance structure, but we didn't like it. Well, in 2006, I went to another workshop in New York with another group that I belonged to, and they rolled out this governance style called result governance, or coherent governance, or even good governance. So I'll use those interchangeably, all the same thing. But results governance is what I usually like to call it. And so we adopted that in 2007, and that's what we still operate under to this day. And under that model, there's hallmarks of again, good governance or results governance. And I'm not going to read these to you. You can read them yourself. But there are 3 that I think are vitally important. Let's see if I can... Did that one come up? So the first one is know your role. There's a saying, everybody has a seat on the bus, right? Know your role. What is your role as a board member, and what is your role as a staff member? And there has to be role clarity for there to be true success in your organization. You will always have confusion and misunderstandings unless you define what those roles are. The second one that I would say is have that long-term vision, and really that's the yet. That is, what is your yet? And it does not have to be this monumental thing like, building a $4 million building. It's just, what is your long-term vision? And that needs to be both for your staff and for your board members, and then you need to come together with that. And as Randy said, we meet once a year, and sometimes it's a one-day, sometimes it's a two-day event, but we put it all on the table, and we talk about that, and we develop our annual plan from that. Every single year, we do this exercise. And then the third one is be in touch with your clients and owners. And this is really a big one because your clients and owners are not just the people that come through your door. That is not just your landowners or your producers that you work with every day. Certainly those are your clients. But your clients, at least for us, because we do have an assessment or a rates and charge, our clients are every single person in Spokane County. So we need to be able to communicate with them on what we're doing, who we are. We don't need to be, as conservation districts, the best kept secret anymore, right? And we've been that for way too long. All of you know, especially you staff people, and I love that there's both staff and board here, you all know you have the greatest job in the world. You really do. You get to live your passion. I always say everybody that works for a conservation district, it's a labor of love. It is passion. So we should not be the best kept secret though, because when we are, we're going to be overlooked and we are going to be passed by. And there are other nonprofits out there that will start mimicking what conservation districts do. They're already out there. We need to be our natural resources best champions. Our people, our constituents, our board members, and our staff. So under results governance, and I'm just doing a very quick summary of this, but it's set up for role clarity between the board and the staff. That is the key to the entire thing. And there's 4 quadrants of policies. There's policies for the board. Those are called your governance culture. It is exactly how the board will operate. And I call them sideboards. And why it's important is because you can't get a rogue board member in then. You can't have somebody that's a really powerful personality or has maybe even a particular special interest. They can't get in and take over your organization. And it's happened. It happened over in Olympia just a couple of years ago in Thurston County Conservation District. It was a disaster. They had 2 board members over there that went totally rogue and just about destroyed that conservation district. This provides sideboards, and it says, we will behave this way. This is our culture. The second group of policies, or the quadrant of policies, is called your BCRs. It's a really weird thing. It's board, and it stands for board CEO relationship. CEO just means manager or director, or whatever you call this person that I am, right? And that says how that board is going to relate and be in relationship with me, with this person, so that I can't have just one board member telling me what to do, but our board works in a unified voice. That everything comes together through a public process, that there aren't secret meetings, that there aren't these things that, I know that you guys are all going, it happens. And it's happened for a long time, and it's one of the reasons that conservation districts are not always recognized in their communities, and we need to change that. And then the third policies are what are called the OEs. Those are the operational expectations. That's the day-to-day stuff, and that is the sole responsibility of the manager to make sure that those get done. So it gives me the authority to have HR policies, to have payroll, to do all of these other things, blah, 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 and it's the staffing, and then they have to report up to me, and then I report up to the board. And the last one, which is actually not the last one, but it's the overarching architecture of the whole thing, is called results, and that is very closely tied to your mission statement. So it doesn't have to be an exact wording of your mission statement. For instance, we only have 4 results that we operate under, and we report up to those 4 results every single year. But it's something like, I'll try to give you an example just off the top of my head. As a result of our work, our constituents will receive this benefit. And then we have whatever that is. So as a result of our work, as a result of us being a conservation district, this will happen, okay? So that's the 4 quadrants. And by the way, These are not pages and pages and pages of policy, are they, Randy? I think the GCs there might be 7 policies total. BCRs, I think there's only 4 or 5. The OEs do have more, but not that many. I mean, I think there might be 10 or 12. So this is not insurmountable. I'm not going to kid you. The initial work does take time, and the initial work is a little bit grueling, but it's doable. And once it's done, it is done. We go back and we review them and we monitor them, but we're never sitting there for hours on end grueling over policies anymore. Now, when we have an update, we just bring it to the board, we look at where it fits in, we get an approval, and we move on with our day, and it's really nice. Our board meetings used to start at about, I can't remember, 5 o'clock at night, and they'd go till 11 o'clock at night. It was ridiculous. We now start at 4 o'clock and we're done at 6 o'clock, right? It's awesome. And you know what? People want to be on our board because it's effective. And when you have effective boards, you have effective relationships, and we'll talk about that more in a minute. I did mention that we do have a monitoring system. So yes, this is a way that we can report and we can monitor and we can know if we're on the right track or if this follows policy. And it's a way to keep those sideboards so that we, don't get something going outside of that. And it's, what's nice is in transitional years when we do have a new board member come in, there's already a culture established, and it makes it really easy for them to come in and be a part of our board. And then I just want to emphasize this again. It demands the board act as board members, not as unpaid staff, right? It was a problem for us for years. Not with every board member. It's always just 1 or 2, but it is a problem. So this takes all that away. And it also requires performance from the employees. We have to get our job done. My feet are held to the fire to make sure that those OEs are accomplished. So this is my quote. The board members are the architects and the staff are the carpenters. That is our structure. All right, so partnerships. I mentioned earlier that I pulled out my briefcase and there were 2 pieces of material. One was embracing change through partnerships. So we had our WACD meeting, and we had the speaker, some of you will know him, Mike Brown from NASCA. He was our speaker, wonderful human, and he spoke about change and partnerships. And at the time that he was giving this presentation, he said that conservation districts around the nation, there's 3,000 of us, are about 75 years old. And for us, that was true. That's exactly where we were. And he said, does your district have what it will take to see its 100th birthday? That was powerful to me. I sat there and thought about that because I had already been with my district. I was there right then that was my 25-year mark. And I knew how quickly that 25 years went. And I knew what we accomplished. But I sat there and thought, how do I ensure that there will be another 25 years and we will see that 100th birthday? It was very powerful. So as he was talking about you have to break outside of the box. And Randy mentioned our partnerships went from this to this to this. We have the traditional partners, of course we do, NRCS, Department of Wildlife, Fish and Wildlife, we have them all. But that meeting was the one where I started making my list, and it was that night. And I filled the back of a piece of paper of every entity, organization, or person that I thought might be a partner to us. And why? Because we had a building to build, and we'll get to that in just a minute. So Mike was instrumental in making that happen for us, and I just want to point out that partnerships are directly related to your organization's health, to your governance, and to your people. So good governance leads to better organizational performance. Better organizational performance attracts good partners, and partnerships are critical to your success. It is just a circle, and that is the key right there. Okay? Today, this is a slide that I had from another presentation. Those are some of our partners, and that's not an exhaustive list. That's just some of our partners. It's a big list, but it's not all of them. But you can see, you could ask me about any single one of those on there, and I could tell you exactly how we work with them or how we partner with them. I'm proud of this. And I'm not taking the credit for myself. I'm proud of our board. I'm proud of our staff. I'm proud of our partners. I'm proud that we are able to put something like this up and know that we are now known in our community. We are not a best-kept secret anymore. We are the Spokane Conservation District, and we have great partnerships. And for us, at the time that this came, we were facing a little bit of a dilemma. We were in our old building for, 20-some years, and our lease was expiring, and the county owned our building, and they were telling us, we need you to leave because we want our building back. Well, spoiler alert. So as Randy said, this is in Central Valley, Spokane, Washington. That's 8th Avenue. That darkened property that kind of looks like the west side of Montana, a little bit, that is 50 acres. And it's 50 acres, and it's just incredible. It's just crazy how it's this very natural setting. It's an old rock quarry, but it's just embedded right into this residential urban setting. And if you look over just adjacent to it, to the right a little bit, there's 2 other pieces that are highlighted. I wish I could have bought those. I couldn't. They have now been completely they're gutted or whatever, and they're both they're apartments. So one of them has like 300 apartments, the other one's going to have 600 apartments. So we're going to be surrounded by even more housing. I'm not against development, by the way. I'm not against housing. I know we need it. I'm just against it being in really particular areas like that. So we got this 50 acres, and our intent was to have that as our new home. But guess what? I didn't have any funding yet. That is the power of this word that Randy speaks, because you have to have that vision and that dream and that yet, and you start putting that out to the universe and things happen because God is good. I was on an airplane and I was talking to a lady and I was telling her about this piece of property, and she happened to be a geologist, and I said, I have this incredible piece of property, but I really don't know what I'm going to do yet. I need to get a building. And she said, have you ever talked to CURB? Community Economic Revitalization Board, Washington State Department of Commerce. Well, no, I haven't, but I sure will tomorrow. And by gosh, I did. I made a phone call. And we got a $50,000 feasibility study grant to be able to actually study the property and determine whether or not it was suitable for a partnership building and for us to be there as a conservation district. So we did that. And I'm going to do that. And so this was our dream. And here's the spoiler alert. That is our building, and it is real, and we do have that, and we do reside there today. But that was our dream. We had this 50-acre campus. We needed some outdoor buildings. We wanted to have private partnerships with us on the campus. We wanted a conference center, a regional conference center. We wanted an integrated trail system. We wanted to have a sculpture park, all those things. This was our dream. This was just our vision. We put this all out there. And today, we're getting there. We spent that feasibility money, and we took 18 months, and we put together, this is my 10-year plan. So those buckets, color-coded, are all 2 years each. We've completely finished the blue. We're well into the red right now. This is phase 2. We have built our building that we're in. It's a 12,500 square foot office building. We're in it, and we lease out space to to our Conservation Commission for part of their staff. And we have now moved on, and we have built another 15,000 square foot building on the same property, and that is a partnership building that we have leasable space in. So we got a little bit crazy with revenue sources. Like, I want to make sure we see our 100th birthday, and we're going to get in the land business as a revenue source if we need to do that, and we did, and it's working. So I keep doing that the wrong way. That was the artist's conception of our property. So you can see we're in a rock quarry. This was the drawing that. Gosh, Randy, I think this is from 2019 probably. This is just the artist rendering of it. And then I think I have a little video, if it'll play, of what it looks like, where we are today. And this video, that's, again, the building. And actually, that's an artist rendering, but our building looks exactly like it. Let's see. One more time. There we go. So this is the construction of our building that we're in. So this would have been in 2020, and we moved in 2021. Starting to fill up there. You're going to see a quick shot of just a couple of days ago. Right there, that was just taken 3 or 4 days ago, and you can see that 15,000 square foot building up in the top. That's our new partnership building. Very exciting. There it is. So, oh, there we go. So I go back to the concept here, because no dream is too big, and it really is the power of yet. You might not have your own building yet, but you can. So Randy likes to use 2 words, passion and persistence. With passion and with persistence, whatever is your yet, you can get there, and you will. And I think Randy wants to come back up now, and if some of you are willing to share, maybe it's just an idea that you have that you haven't shared before, and no idea is silly. Just shout it out. We want to hear what they are.
So I taught for 39 years. So when you'd ask questions to teenagers, high schoolers, there was always what was the quarter. I might answer, and their hands go up a quarter. Then there was the half kids. Then there was a 3/4, and then there was the full. Like, I'm ready to go and do this. So I don't tolerate things being a quarter or a half or 3/4. I mean, you should go and be bold. And so if a teacher asks their students that they dearly love, would you like to share? What should I expect to see from you? All your hands going up, and actually, there's Dennis, and he's going like, all right, I'm ready to go and share. So what are some of our yets? And I would like for you to be bold, and we don't have a mic to wander around with, so you might have to use your voices and boom it out. So what are some of the goals and dreams that you'd like to go and have? I got one. Thank you. So I'm going to have you stand. You give some passion and they laugh at. Oh, yeah, I know. They always do. They laugh at Da Vinci. They laugh at Galileo. Why won't they laugh at me? So boom your voice out. Okay, so the question I think just goes to your yes, and partially relates to what's going on in Montana. I think it's massive on it in Washington. You have 1 point. You took and built your base up. Bring up your capacity, bring up the built capacity, and now you're building up the capacity. So in the long term, a lot of what we are dealing with government funds from NRCS, from our state conservation, competition, but it's from our state legislature. But if we're attempting to increase our status as conservation leaders, that's part of what you say you have to build it off the trees, that you need the money. So here's my question. When you look at those others, particularly the funding revenue streams of the government, they only have a limit. So what role either in your district and or Washington does seeking private funding play? How aggressive do you do it? And so how do you see that? Are you aggressive with it or not?
Private funding?
Yes.
So you're talking about like private funding, like donations and private gifting?
I think it could be, but I think sometimes you see, I see, I want to say, nonprofits, they have to live and die off. They can't, they have to earn their money, no base like we have.
Right.
So the question is, for us to go either to a more solid level or a higher level, it's not just donations, it's learning to go get private money, because we have a foot in both worlds.
Yes, you do. And I talk about that a lot, that conservation districts, it's so beautiful how our laws are written, that we have 1 foot in the private sector and 1 foot in the public sector, right? I agree with that. So it's a matter of just diversification. So wherever that funding source is where you just spread that out. But we don't depend on just we have some private funding, but that's actually pretty limited. So our base and our capacity was built over time. So, and again, definitely changed in 1991 with our assessment. That helped because we were able to take that money and start leveraging it against other money. So leveraging is a very important concept to have because it allowed us to go after larger awards where you have a cost or a match that you have to meet, right? So that's why I said, this is such a critical time for you in Montana for this funding study, and it really, if it's not going to happen now, it's like when it needs to happen right now. So I'm not sure if I'm really answering your question very well, but the capacity has to be built off your past performance. So that's going to go into your governance. You got to be good at what you do. You don't want to have these little blemishes where it's like, they kind of shady. You don't want any of that because you want those good, solid partners, whether they are private or public. You want people to believe and they want to get on the bus with you. And that's both your board and your staff. And so Randy talks about having a great staff, and we do, but we have a great board too, and they have led us in a solid, movement forward for the last 31 years. So again, I'm not sure if I totally answered your question.
But I think the one that you're saying was, it's the leveraging is what counts.
Leveraging, absolutely.
You don't build the base, you take a really strong base, and you don't aggressively leverage off it, you're missing a huge opportunity.
You are, and I actually have one more slide, and maybe that'll help a little bit too. That quote up at the top. So, beyond the duties of care, loyalty, and obedience, there is, I suggest, a fourth duty, and it's the duty of imagination. So you got to get creative within your legal construct, and that's why Randy said we are always looking back at 8908, our operational our guidelines from Washington State. We are always looking at that, but you do have to get a little bit creative with, can we do this? Is it legal for us to do this? And if it is, go for it. And I think that's one of the things that Spokane has been both celebrated for and criticized for, because we have done some really out there things. Like Randy said, we've had a couple failures. We built straw bale homes. They were fantastic, but it wasn't the right time for them. People were not ready for straw bale homes. They are today. We were just a little ahead of our time. We also got into the oilseed business back in the day. Oh, I think people would like to have their cars with French fry smell now, but when we did it, they weren't ready for that conversion. So we have had a couple of, maybe failure is not quite the right word, but just not ready. Yeah, successful failures. But if it's within if you have the ability to do it, and you have the support of your board, and you have the expertise of a staff to be able to pull it off, go for it. You want to add anything to that, Randy? Okay, who's got the next yet?
Go ahead.
I didn't want to go first because it didn't seem like it was my turn yet.
Yet.
Since this is about conservation, this is mine. This is my, what is your yet? I have yet to put my McCullen Creek ditch water in a pipe. Wow.
Yeah.
I'm kind of into this. This is my pipe dream. Conserve water and multiply the benefits realized from this very old water right.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Very good.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So as an educator, when you have a reluctant group of students that are unwilling to share their yets. Could you just turn to your neighbors real quick and just share your yet to them? Just read off your card real quick, please.
We'll take that card home with them and think about it over the next couple days.
She's mad at me. Oh, so you.
Okay, I'd like at least 3 more yets, and I have one right here. Go ahead.
My debt when I started with the district was a new facility, similar to, won't be near as big as yours, but we're getting close and we've pushed pretty hard, and really looked into district law and what we could do and how we could leverage it. So that's my yet, and it's about to come true, and then from there, we'll start building. Very good.
Awesome. 2 more. Awesome.
So I guess I don't know if it's necessarily, well, it's a yet. So my big goal, I guess
I'm
you'd
having you
say.
stand and project.
So I'm still,
Big girl voice.
what did we decide? You're still new in this, so you're like 5 years in, right? So I'm still very much new. I'm not even at a first year yet. My board members, I luck out where they're very forgiving, but then I guess I hear some stories and like listening to you guys talk about going rogue. I don't feel like mine do anything to even go rogue. So I guess that's where I need to maybe start back at the basic foundation and go more into the governance and so I guess that would be my yet, to start back at the roots of the system. And
Yep, absolutely.
you gotta have a solid foundation before you build a house, right?
And one more yet. You need to be bold and brave. Rebecca, newly married on Saturday.
My yet, I'm trying to project it be loud. My yet is that in the next legislative session, through the study bill that you guys so thoughtfully kept mentioning, are able to get districts to have a minimum base operating budget of $80,000. Although now we're trying to shoot higher. We'll see what happens.
So any questions you might have of us, and you can always contact Rebecca or Mary, and would know how to get a hold of us. And it's just a phone call away, emails away, and all of the people are just amazing in answering questions, and more than happy to assist for you to grow in that. And it takes a long time and a huge amount of work, shifting of your board thinking, board acting as one, speaking as one. It's a remarkable journey. I've got to see 23 years of it. I always wanted to be a farmer, of all things, a pig farmer. I mean, yeah, crazy. But the closest thing I ever came was helping my neighbor's swath, and I love swathing. There's power in swathing. And hustling some cows for them, but also be on the conservation district. Closest thing I'll ever get to being part of the land in that. So I thank you very much. If you have any other questions, I know Vicki and I would be glad to answer them. I know it's getting kind of a little bit on the late side, and you've had a long day.
And I too just wanted to thank you all again, and a shout out to my home state of Montana. You guys are awesome. Keep up the great work. And it really just starts with a spark. So if there was something that resonated with you tonight, don't wait. Act on it tomorrow. When I was on that airplane with that lady, I'm not kidding. The next morning I was calling Curb to find out how do I get money. Don't wait. Act on those little impulses right now. All right? That's it. Thank you.
And I just wanted to do a kind of final thank you, closing round for everyone. Again, thank you so much, everyone, for coming. It's really wonderful, as I think you all said, to have both, we have supervisors, employees, partners here. We have a really wonderful kind of cross-section of our conservation district community. So thank you everyone for being here. Also, again, a huge thank you to Kleffner Ranch for hosting us, as well as all of our different sponsors, including Kleffner, NRCS, DNRC played a huge role. The EO, Lewis and Clark Conservation District, the River Councils, thank you everyone. And I did want to give another shout out to the folks that did so much work planning that. Mary Hendricks, Catherine, Chris, and Steph Criswell. So thank you again so much for being here. We're excited to continue. We have the spring board day 2 tomorrow, and the EO has a really incredible financial training planned. And just to close, I would like to give our speakers one more round of applause. So thank you. Eat the cupcakes.